you know how you did that, I don't know, what's it called? Dividing the screen so that all the speakers can be seen.
Okay, I think we can. I think Mwangi can start the video, but we're also live on YouTube. I can confirm that.
Oh, now we are live on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess let me just do a quick intro, which will be 15 seconds because we don't have time. So we are already live, huh?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. So thanks, guys, for joining us today. Sorry for the delay. And so this is the Africa Debates. I don't know if we call it podcast or channel, but yeah. So like pretty much we just want to have discussions of matters Africa, and obviously it has a religious bent because of the people who are managing the podcast, and so like especially Christian bent, but we still want the Christian issues to be discussed. And so today we are talking about science. There's this idea that, you know, more scientifically educated you are, the more you should abandon religion for atheism. And Christians would say maybe the opposite. So we want to have a conversation on that. And so we just want to start now. We want to start with Mwangi Shege. I guess maybe just a quick introduction. Mwangi Shege is a friend of mine from Apologetics Kenya, and he will be representing the Christian position. And Carrington Kinyanjui is another friend, and actually maybe we will share more about himself later, but he has a passion, both of them have a passion for science, and so he is going to support the atheism, or should I say secular humanist position. So we will just start now. I think we'll still, maybe because of time, I think we will do a 15-minute introductory statement so as to not take too much time. So like Mwangi is just going to start right now with 15 minutes of his opening statement on whether people should still be Christians in light of scientific endeavor and scientific knowledge, or the increase of it. So Mwangi, to you.
All right, thank you. Good evening, and it's good to see all of us. I hope we are all well. And as you've heard, my name is Mark, and I am going to be defending the position that Christianity is a rational worldview, and why we should uphold Christianity and not naturalism. So, furthermore, I think I'd also want to indeed argue and posit that even if Christianity were not true, naturalism, I think Charles will keep exchanging naturalism, secular humanism, but I'll just talk about naturalism. That even if Christianity were not true, naturalism is still not a worldview to hold for, I mean, if you take it for what it espouses. Now, what are we really talking about? With Christianity, we are really talking about a worldview that believes that there is a God and that he has revealed himself through the person of Jesus Christ. That's basically the grounding, or rather the main truth that Christianity espouses. And what about naturalism? Naturalism, we'll be talking about two main things, but mainly there's what we call metaphysical naturalism, and that's the idea that the natural world, or the material world as we see it, is all that there is and all that exists. That's one. And the second facet of naturalism would be what is epistemological naturalism, or what people call scientific naturalism. And it's the idea that you should only believe what can be scientifically proven, or what people would say, you know, only believe what can be evidenced through facts. And I am using facts here in quotes. But then, even before we continue, what I would want to argue is that foundationally, naturalism is false. Now, if you think about it, if you look at the screen, I have labeled metaphysical naturalism as P and epistemological naturalism as Q. But you see, if you think carefully, you cannot believe P and Q at the same time. Now, of course, please understand, I am not saying that people don't believe P and Q at the same time. I am saying that if you believe P and Q at the same time, you are being inconsistent. In fact, they are contradictory to each other. For you see, Q, the idea that epistemological or rather science is the only way to truth, or perhaps the best way, you see, science is only limited to truths about the natural world. So science has no way of telling you that P is true. And therefore, if you're going to believe Q, if you're going to believe P because of Q, then you're committing a logical fallacy. For Q cannot help you know that P is true. So that's the first thing. So for you to believe P, you have to believe it purely on blind faith. But then we will be asked, because the opposing side will be supporting naturalism, we'll wait to hear why we should actually believe P or what proof we have for P to be true. But secondly, think about Q. The idea that you should only believe what can be scientifically proven. But that even in itself is self-contradictory. Why? Because that is in itself is not a statement of science. And so this is a metaphysical commitment that one makes, and yet they claim to make it through a scientific process. So it's a metaphysics commitment, and yet they are saying that science is the only way. In fact, there is no way of science telling you that science is the only way to truth, or that you should only believe what can be scientifically proven. Science cannot tell you that. So if you are going to believe that, you have to believe it again purely on blind faith. So really the foundation of naturalism, and that's why I was saying, even if Christianity were false, naturalism is not true. And so for one who wants to live consistent with what they believe, then they cannot believe naturalism to be true. But then we ask, is it just the foundation of naturalism that is a problem? But also the walls too. And what I want to submit is that even the walls, the building blocks of naturalism themselves are faulty. Now, let's look at Christianity before perhaps I go on to the next point. Now, Christianity begins by espousing that God is the foundation for all truth. And that means that we can appreciate, and then the next thing it says is that we as human beings have been created in the image of God. And we'll be looking at this later. And therefore, because we have been made in the image of God, we are able to perceive things from the lens through which God has allowed us to see. And therefore, we have a foundation. And then remember, the next thing is that the Christian can still do science, because the Christian would still hold to epistemological naturalism. And that is to say that he can still hold to the fact that science is a very good way of learning about the natural world. But the Christian is not committed to the idea that only the natural world exists. And so he has these other avenues and pointers and blocks with which he can build on to understand even the metaphysical world, or the world out there. Now, my time is running short. I'll try to go through what I can, but I have almost 7 points. Now, let's look at the first thing. Number one is that Christianity provides a framework for doing science. Now, this was the understanding of the Christian fathers. When we talk about the guys like Galileo, the people like Johannes Kepler, really from what is called the scientific revolution, if you call it that, from around 1500 coming this way, from Copernicus with his revolutions, they realized that the world was God's world. And so they were just following God's thoughts after him. And so, and this is actually an idea that has been held even by atheist philosophers. They appreciated that modern science actually arose from the Christian West. And why it did that is because men believed in God. In fact, C.S. Lewis reduces it this way. He says that men became scientific because they believed in law in nature. And they believed in law in nature because they believed in a lawgiver. And in their book, Saxon and Piercy have also shown how the first 300 years, from 1500 to around 1800, Christianity and science were never seen to be in opposition. And the people who espoused actually the idea of a war between science and Christianity were actually just pushing for naturalism. But what are some of the things that Christianity grounds and naturalism cannot ground? For example, the fact that there is a past. Now, you might take this for granted that you wake up every day and you think that yesterday was a day, the other day was a day, you were born in 1990, 1995, 1980. But there's a group, and I would thank Carrington because he's the one who made me know that there's such a group that believes that we were all created last Thursday, okay? And we were created with a mind thinking and memories, thinking that we were born a long time ago. But imagine on naturalism, you have no way of disapproving that. You have no way of knowing, by the way, that we are just a brain in a vat. You have no way of knowing that we are even in a matrix because you rely just on empirical data. But you see, even if we were in a matrix, we would not know that we are in a matrix. And I thought if you have watched the movie The Matrix, you can see unless somebody comes from outside to give you, I think it was the blue pill, you couldn't know. You live your life as if that is what is normal and real. But secondly, Christianity grounds the laws of logic. Now remember, the laws of logic are immaterial. They are not material things. They are not things that you can touch or hold or see. But science presupposes the laws of logic. Again, we can look at that. My time is really running out. I just have 15 minutes. Then there is the reality of other minds. Now, I have no way of proving that you here who are listening to me have other minds. You could just be, soulless atoms who exhibit external behavior of being persons. But you see, if God does not exist, I have no way of knowing that. It could be that I am lying to myself, what I am seeing. But you see, I have no way of proving that. Number, the other thing is, again, I'll just rush through this, that we do not know that what is reflected in our minds is what is actually happening in the real world. And you really need to know that for you to do science. Now, I thought it used to be obvious that what I'm seeing and observing is actually what is happening. Until I went with my child to one of the parks, national park, not national parks, just these outside playing parks. And there was a lion, those models of a lion. And he kept running away from the lion, and yet it was a plastic one. But you see, in his mind, he thought the lion was real. But you see, unless we have a delimiter of knowing what is actually real, if we just rely on our observations, we have no way of saying that the person who is mentally challenged is wrong, and we are not the ones who are mentally challenged. And of course, even the objectivity of moral values and duties, I think that was discussed last week. But think about it. Christianity also provides grounding for knowledge, while naturalism undermines knowledge. Now, as I said, in Christianity, we have the Imago Dei, and God imbues in us the ability to study the natural world. And so the Christians have always held that God has given us two books, the book of scripture and the book of nature. And all those are revelations of who we are. And you find scriptures like Psalms 19 talking about how the heavens themselves declare the glory of God. And so the Christian is able to understand or learn knowledge because God has imbued with them the capacity to do that. Now, again, I will also say, and I think I mentioned that epistemological naturalism, the fact that science is a good way of understanding the natural world, does not entail metaphysical naturalism. In fact, if you're going to hold to Q, then you have to be a Christian. For you see, with naturalism, there are no intentional states. That is to say, that I cannot be thinking about anything as a naturalist. Why? Because intentional states are not natural things. They are not material things. They are immaterial. But remember, in naturalism, everything is material. So how then do you get the immaterial from what is material? So you can't really know. And that's what we are trying to talk about. You can't be thinking about anything. And this is not even my argument. This is an idea that is held by atheist philosophers like Alan Rosenberg. And the reason, because they understand that, what they will say is that we are actually not thinking. But we know that we are thinking. We actually know that we are thinking. And so if you're going to be consistent, then you're going to be a Christian. Again, Christianity upholds meaning in the universe. Now, this is something that, again, is held by all of, okay, not all, but most naturalistic philosophers like Nietzsche, Russell, and Sartre, that there's no reason, if God does not exist, it is very difficult to show, rather, in the absence of God, that objective meaning, value, and purpose in life actually exist. And hence, the idea of naturalism just leads us to despair. You see, there's nothing that is going to say, if the world is all that there is, then why not just destroy it anyway? If the end result of everything that we are going to do here is meaningless, then why do it? Why sit here and listen to this discussion? After all, it doesn't matter. Whether you live your life as Hitler, you live your life as a good person, whichever way you live your life, it doesn't actually matter. Ultimately, it is meaningless. And so we had better be nihilists rather than being, naturalists. And the last point, I have 1 minute. I have two others, but I'll just finish here, is that Christianity provides good grounding for truth. So again, remember, as a naturalist, you have to believe, or at least you are bound to believe in evolution, that the best explanation for the development of species is really evolution. However, again, as I will say, you cannot believe in naturalism and evolution at the same time. Again, I am not saying here that you can't believe it. What I am saying is that if you believe it, you have got to see that they are contradictory in themselves. So even if you believe it, you have to live inconsistently. You see, evolution tells us that the main goal of the evolutionary paradigm is adaptation. You see, or rather, adaptation is only interested in survival, not truth. And so the behavior we hold to, it doesn't matter why we believe we do what we do, for so long as our behavior is advantageous for survival. For example, even if I believe that when I see a lion, when a lion is just about to eat me, that there is going to be an imaginary guy who cuts me into pieces when the lion comes, I will run away. I could also believe that when the lion comes, it will eat me. Those two beliefs will make me run away. But you see, both of them allows me to survive, but it doesn't mean that both of them are true. We shouldn't assume that there's a connection between what we believe and how we behave. And notice, you cannot even rely on your cognitive abilities to tell you, you can say then, when if I can't know, I can test whether this belief is true. Remember, already you have a defeater in yourself of why you shouldn't believe your cognitive faculties. Now, for all that there is, this doesn't mean that naturalism is false. It only means that we can't know. We cannot know it to be true. And if that is the case, then if we can't know anything to be true, then we shouldn't rely on our cognitive faculty, because we don't know whether they are going to tell us the truth or they are going to tell us a lie. Now, I don't know, Charles, will you cue me when my time is up so that I can go to the next 2 points?
Oh, in fact, I thought I already said you are 2 minutes past time.
Okay, sorry.
So I guess you could maybe just wind up and then we will add.
I can stop here. I have two others: how advancements in science support belief in God, and how naturalism is not livable, which I think I have covered a bit of that. We can look at it maybe at the next time I'll be speaking.
Okay, I guess that's fine. You can stop sharing. Thanks for that. Now, if Carrington could put his video on, and then let me share. his, wait, just a second. So I'm sharing his presentation. Okay, I hope it can be seen. Is it clear enough? Huh? Okay, you can put your audio on, Carrington.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Carrington Kinyanjui. I'm a student of science, still a student. I teach it partially, and I am going to argue for the position that science is more consistent with naturalism than Christianity by definitions of science and naturalism and Christianity. Next slide.
Oops.
So, what is science? I'm sure you know of these stock photos, these nice photos of nice Europeans in white lab coats, taking measurements in very clean laboratories and doing nice things. This is actually not science. This is a bastardization of science from our movies. Science is actually a much simpler thing, a much simpler way of thinking, a much simpler philosophy. Next slide. So this is one of my so-called scientific heroes. I know some of you are familiar with him. This is Carl Sagan. He was an astronomer. He organized missions to go to Mars, organized other astronomical missions, very good with public outreach of science. So he wrote a book called Cosmos, which defined the rules of science. Next slide. The first rule of science is that there are no sacred truths. All assumptions must be critically examined. Arguments from authority, underlying authority, are worthless. So what does this mean? No professor is allowed to tell you something like this. Evolution is correct. And you're not allowed to say, yes, professor, I believe evolution is correct because you've said. Even God is not an authority in science. I cannot write a paper and say that God told me that string theory is correct because of this and this and this. Even God himself is not, or herself, or itself is not an authority in science. So there are no authorities in science, and there are no sacred truths. There are no received truths in science. Second rule. Whatever is inconsistent with experimentally established facts must either be one, discarded, or two, revised. So if you repeat these steps 1 and step 2 iteratively, you end up with a process where you generally converge towards what you can call epistemological truth. And the hope is that your epistemology, how you understand the universe, matches your ontology, how the universe actually is. And these are the rules of science. So if you understand your instrument, for example, your measurement instrument, your observation instrument, if you understand its processes very well, you understand how it takes data, how it records this data, you understand the relationships between this data, you get closer and closer to truth. So actually, Maxi can easily point out that statements 2 and 1 are actually a bit in tension, not mutually inconsistent, but there's a bit of a tension. Actually, the only authority in science is nature. Next slide. So what is naturalism then? Naturalism simply for me is a philosophy, a way of thinking, a credo, if you will, that is committed to rules 1 and 2, that there are no authorities in science and that we must test everything that we can claim about our environment. And when I say everything, please underline everything. There's no such thing as supernaturalism. There's no such thing as some part of the universe that is forever in principle apart from us, or apart from our understanding, or apart from our observation in principle. So these are two good naturalists. I like them. This is Socrates on the left and Einstein on the right. These are paintings of the two individuals. I would call Socrates a scientifically inclined philosopher, and I will call Einstein the opposite, a philosophically inclined scientist. And that's why they are attractive to me. This dance between philosophy and science are, I think, important. We must understand what we are doing, why we are doing, and how we are doing it. So Socrates is one of the very first naturalists. He talked about experience, trying to look at the universe, although he came up with the wrong theories for it, and so did Einstein ultimately. The idea was that you would let nature guide you with no starting principles, no beginning biases. So this is a principle that has been useful to us, useful to Western science, quote unquote, and even Eastern science and African science, by the way, for several thousand years. And I think this dance between science and naturalism is quite productive. Next slide. I'm sorry, by the way, I only have pictures. I have very few words. I like thinking using pictures, so I put pictures on my things. So what is Christianity? I started with the bastardization of science. So this is also, I believe in myself, a bastardization of Christianity. You can see Kanyari with his 310, and this other pastor, Pastor Nganga, and Rachel Ruto, saying that they prayed for a well somewhere in Karen, I think in the deputy president's mansion, and the water got purified all of a sudden. I think that these are Christian capitalists and Christian politicians just bastardizing Christianity for their own economic or political ends. So this is not the Christianity that I want to attack right now. This is a Christianity that is easy to attack, but I'm not interested in right now. So next slide. I see Christianity as being defined by two principles like science. I try to simplify my thinking so that I can organize my thinking around certain issues. One, that belief in Christ, and that belief that he is the Son of God, and that God is this supernatural agent, all powerful, all knowing, who created the universe, and that Christ is his Son. Next slide. Belief that he died and resurrected for human iniquities, human sin, for our sinful nature, our failure to transcend our, what you would call, basal instincts. So these are two things that I think all Christians share in space and time. So even the Gnostics who died off, this group of intellectually inclined Christians who died off, who were in Egypt, I think, and parts of the Middle East, but they ended up dying off. I think that all Christians, the Orthodox, the Catholics, the Protestants, share this basic belief. So this is the Christianity that I'm interested in. Are these two statements consistent with science? Next slide. I will say that the story of the resurrection, for example, and the crucifixion is inconsistent with science. And it is not inconsistent with science for this simplistic reason that very, very few people have seen people dying and coming back to life. It is inconsistent in science because of the methodologies that are used by these different ways of thinking about our universe. So next slide. The first is belief. You believe the resurrection. None of us was in Jerusalem. None of us was there when Joseph of Arimathea was burying Jesus Christ. So this has to be believed. And there's very little documentary evidence supporting this anyway, by respectable authorities supporting this, and by varied authorities respecting this. So this historical process of trying to trace the life of Jesus Christ is at best very difficult and wrought with a lot of innuendo. Science, on the other hand, relies on verificationism. How do you verify? How do you know that something is true? So I come here with something like camel milk, and I tell you this blue camel milk comes from my flying horse, which I have at home. So the question is, do you just believe me because I am the Son of God, or I myself profess to be the Son of God? I cannot prove to you that I'm the Son of God. So the story is that you will end up following me. If you are a child, this is exactly what you'll do. You will follow me to my home, and then find out whether I in fact have this horse. So science is based on verificationism, but Christianity is based on belief. So, and these two things pull in different directions. So don't trust, verify is the principle that is on the Royal Society's door. On this other side, we start with belief. There are various rituals, there are various practices that require belief in Christianity, and there's an inherent tension between the two. Next slide. So I will quickly go through some recent modern discoveries in physics that show you that actually this principle of naturalism, being committed to a natural universe and being committed to the fact that this natural universe can be understood using very simple empirical methodologies, can actually work and is actually working against this idea of belief. So this is an artist's rendition of the Big Bang. So you have a point and then rapid expansion of energy, and then that's how our universe is born. There's still mysteries to be found out, but that is the big picture. So we see this in our telescopes, radio telescopes, optical telescopes, etc. We see that galaxies that are farther away are moving much faster than galaxies that are closer to us. This tells us one thing, that everything is spreading away from all other things. So we in the Milky Way galaxy are moving away from the Andromeda galaxy, and the Andromeda galaxy is moving away from the M87 galaxy, for those of you who are interested in black hole physics, for example. And this moving away of points causes that seemingly accelerating movement according to distance. So what does that tell us? It tells us a very simple thing. It tells us that these points must have come, by logical extrapolation, must have come from a single place. And this single place is what is called the Big Bang. There are other chemical evidences of the Big Bang. For example, the ratios between hydrogen, helium, and other elements like gold must have been generated at a specific temperature. And if you calculate back to the Big Bang, you get this temperature. So we have a big picture for how our universe began, but we are yet to fill in the details of how this universe began. And the details that definitely are, the Christian God is not part of these details. Sadly, it's just the way it is. The Christian God is not part of these details. Next slide. There's another thing that I find very interesting in physics, and this is the concept of invariance. So the laws of physics are invariant. Invariant means in and variant. Variant, opposite of variant. So invariant, do not change. They don't change. They don't change with respect to space or time. So I cannot go and change my location, change my space, change my distance, change my location in space, and go to Lake Victoria, and I'm a body of average density greater than water, and walk on Lake Victoria. I will sink. Similarly, I cannot go to Lake Galilee 2,000 years ago and walk on it if I am a body of average density greater than water. I will sink. Therefore, in all likelihood, Jesus did not hold Peter's hand and suddenly make Peter light enough to walk on water. So this did not happen because of this invariance of the laws of physics. Archimedes' principle of flotation, which was taught in Form 3, applies now and then, here and there. So because of that simple reason, which is a naturalist commitment, by the way, we do not have biological, physical, or chemical miracles. Next slide. And even for the questions that we are yet to answer, because this is a common trope that is employed by anybody with some sort of theological commitment, that because we haven't answered questions to do with the origin of the universe, the ultimate origin of the universe, the ultimate origin of energy. Therefore, that's where God comes in. The unmoved mover, the uncaused causer comes in and causes things to move and causes things to be caused, whatever that means. I am not committed to this God of the gaps view. I find it even reducing to God. It is even disrespectful to God to be committed to this idea that God fills in epistemological gaps in science. And of course, if you decide to be committed to this God filling in epistemological gaps in science, you have a problem because the empire, the empire of science is always expanding, which means that the empire of God is always receding, which is a problem for you. There's less and less for you to believe in, and your God becomes weaker and weaker with time. Next slide. I would like to invite us to have a look at the square kilometer array. Those small dishes that you're seeing are actually telescopes arranged in such a way that they view the same object at the same time to increase resolution. And this is being built in South Africa, and a small node will be built in Kenya, Botswana, I forget the other countries, Mauritius, etc. So there's African science that is coming up, and I would really love to invite us to be committed to this view that we can understand our universe, not necessarily relying on the crutches of myth and mythology. Next slide. So I will quickly go through biology. I'm sure you've seen this picture, and everybody who is Christian or committed to some other theological view is immediately defensive when they see this picture. This is actually a simplification of biology. What actually happens is that evolution does not flow in a straight line. It flows in form of a tree, something called a phylogenetic tree. So
1 minute left.
Okay, quickly. Yeah. So that's an example of a phylogenetic tree. What is happening is life is trying paths, several paths. Some paths are failing and others are working out. And we, the Homo sapiens, are the result of a branch that worked out. I will explain the details if they're required. Next slide, Charles. And this is a phylogenetic tree of the coronavirus. So evolution is a fact. I hope this is clear so that we can proceed from here. Evolution is a fact. The genesis of species by natural selection is a biological fact, not a theory. Next slide. This is Jeremy England. You should check out his work. He is basically proving that it is possible for life to form by statistical physics. So he's a biophysicist, and he's working on the origins, not the development, the origins of life. So the question of the origins of life is already being answered by using statistics. Next slide. And even for the questions that we don't know yet how to answer, again, I would recommend that you don't get into a God of the gaps view. That picture over there is the Kenya Medical Research Institute. Again, there are opportunities for young scholars and young scientists to get into this. So that is, next slide. Asante sana. I hope you've drawn the lessons that I have come to explain. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mwangi Shage and Carrington Kinyanjui for the awesome opening statements. And for those who are joining us, we are discussing like whether Christianity and atheism, which one is compatible with science, and whatever is compatible with science, like whether that should be what an African should actually embrace. So that's the discussion for today. And so like we've had the opening statements. Now we want to get into the rebuttal from Mwangi Shege, if you can have his video on. And so we will have a rebuttal for 10 minutes. I think 10 minutes is okay, or I think I will limit it to 8 minutes because of the time. I hope the 8 minutes will be, but okay, let me do it 10 minutes. So each will be 10 minutes. So let's just start immediately. So Shage is going to respond to what Carrington has discussed about the incompatibility of science with Christianity.
All right. So thank you, Carrington. It was indeed a good it is so far a good discussion. Number one, I hope you can hear me. Just so I know.
Yeah.
Yes, you're clear.
I want to appreciate that Carrington did not mischaracterize Christianity. At least he did not, he's not shooting straw men when he says that Christianity believes in Jesus as the Son of God and actually that he rose from the dead. However, the problem I have is that he mischaracterizes faith, where he talks about faith being what you believe, and here he means blind faith, and that science is more verificationist and believes in, verifying. Now, if you will note his original argument, just so that I can distract you less, he says that science believes in two things. Number one, that there are no sacred truths. And number two, I forget the second one. It was something, I'll remember it maybe as I continue. Maybe someone can, I'll remember it.
Data. Whatever is inconsistent with the facts must be revised or discarded.
Correct. Now, there's only one problem. It is with statement one. And this is why I was noting and saying, please note the problem with naturalism is that it doesn't even start. Before it even goes to push and adjudicate for what it is arguing for, it doesn't start. For it begins by telling us that there are no sacred truths. But notice that the idea that there are no sacred truths is a sacred truth, unless of course they can show us through experiments that there are no sacred truths. So this is something you have to take on authority from the naturalist, and yet he's telling you do not believe any authority. Number two is the idea that God is not an authority in science. Now, this is an interesting statement because even the Christian does not maintain that God is an authority in science. The Christian maintains that science is an endeavor that seeks to understand the natural world. But notice when you say that then the epistemology leads you to the ontology of how the world actually is, you are no longer talking about facts and evidence. You have moved to metaphysics. For science cannot tell you that the world is all that there is. And that's just the contention the Christian is making. Science has no way of telling you that. It can't. And therefore, if you have to hold that, it is going to be on the same basis of belief that the Christian is being told that he's running into. But notice that belief in God is not like belief in naturalism. For the Christian maintains that God can be known, that there is a way to verify the truth about God. It is just that everything about God cannot be fully understood. And therefore, faith in God consists of trusting in what has been revealed to understand what we have not yet been revealed to us. And so you can't even use nature, study science, but at some point it points you to the fact that external intelligence is required. Now, he talked about the God of the gaps. Now, interestingly, Christians don't also believe in the God of the gaps, at least most of them. For even I cannot argue, for example, in an engineering class that an internal combustion engine works because of God. In fact, I cannot even argue that it works because of the person who designed the engine. But notice that the explanation of the internal combustion engine as a mechanism is completely different from the explanation of the designer of the engine as an agent. And those two explanations are different. So what the other side is trying to tell us is disregard the agent explanation and only focus on the mechanism explanation because the agent does not exist. But all of us know, even by intuition, that there has to be a designer of the engine. And that's simply what we are saying. And so issues like the Big Bang, I am comfortably willing to accept the Big Bang. And most people know that. Because I don't see it as in fact, I see it as a theologically neutral premise for the Kalam argument. For if the universe is going to begin at some point in the past, then it has a beginning. And we need an explanation for that beginning, an agent explanation. And maybe if you have time, I can look at that. What about the fact that, okay, I think I am missing the other point he talked about. I think he talked about the resurrection. Yes, the resurrection of Jesus. So Carrington wants us to believe that the resurrection of Jesus can only be believed on blind faith. But again, this is not true. And if you go to YouTube, I have covered a whole 3 lessons on some of the historical facts that point us to the reality that Jesus actually rose from the dead. And so when you look at the background of information, the only thing you have to hold is that God exists. And since as a Christian, I am not committed to the idea that God does not exist, then the resurrection becomes a huge possibility, because there are 4 minimal facts you have to hold. That there was a man called Jesus who roamed on earth, who operated with immense power and conviction and believed that he was acting in the place of God. Now, that's not even very contradictory. I mean, what is the word? Well, let's say contradictory at this moment. Controversial is the word I'm looking for. It's not very controversial. Number 2, you have to not believe that there is enough evidence to believe that he died through crucifixion and he was buried in a tomb. Again, not controversial. Then you have to, there's evidence that 3 days later, the tomb was empty. And the last evidence we use is that people, and not just one person, more than 500 and more people believed, or rather came claiming that they had seen him rise from the dead, and also the fact that that was the basis for the growth of the church. Now, whichever method you will use to explain those 4 minimal facts of the resurrection, the 4 minimal facts, or we could call them 5, that the fact that Jesus rose from the dead is going to be the best explanation, and no naturalistic explanation explains all the data. You can say somebody stole his tomb, it was a wrong tomb, that, oh, he was not thrown in the tomb. You can say that he faked his death. You can say there was a hallucination, and all those naturalistic explanations. In fact, in the world of theology, all those naturalistic explanations have been shown to be false. And so the fact that Jesus rose from the dead still remains to be the best explanation. And then, of course, the idea that evolution is a fact, and I think this is just, the word evolution is just used an accordion, so that we see the adaptation of species, and you can see these things of genetic modification in species. But what I am interested in finding out is whether we have evidence. And remember, science is interested in observation. We have observable evidence of movement of kind, and that's the only thing that the Christian is saying, that there is no speciation through kind. But let's also look at something else. The fact that we believe, or that evolution could be true, is still not a problem for the Christian. For the Christian can still hold that evolution is true, and that does not mean that God does not exist. And so you realize that the Christian can still pursue evolution as a science and say that I don't believe in evolution because the science is bad, not because I believe in God. And so our commitment or lack of commitment in evolution has nothing to do with our faith in God. It is just that as a person, I feel the science in evolution is bad. There's somebody else who might say that the science is good, and so they become theistic evolutionists. Those who think it is not good just abandon the whole worldview altogether. And so I see Charles is telling me my time is up again. So I think I'll stop there.
Oh, actually, you had 36 seconds left, but if you want to stop there.
If I had 36 seconds left, maybe just to point about, I think Carrington said that Socrates is one of his, one of the people he espouses. Now, you will remember that Socrates did believe in an unknown God.
Actually, it was Aristotle, but proceed.
Okay, oh, it was Aristotle. Yeah, Aristotle was a naturalist. I thought you meant Socrates, but it's fine. Then I think I will end my rebuttal at this point. Maybe what we have not heard from the other side is reasons to believe that naturalism is true. As I said, we need a reason as to why we should believe that the natural world is all that there is, and that science is the best way to truth, the best way of understanding truth. We are yet to be given a reason of why that is true.
Time is up.
Thank you.
All right, and let's just go straight to the rebuttal from Carrington, giving reasons why the Christian position is not tenable. You can start.
Okay, thank you. I am not going to rebut and say that Christianity doesn't work. Maybe it works for people, but not for me. Just not for me. At least in my work as a student of science. So there's the very first thing that I'd like to take time to engage with is this idea of the fact that there are no sacred truth is a sacred statement. Now, the clarification here is that statement, there are no sacred truths in science, all arguments or points from authority are worthless, is not a scientific statement. It is not the objective of science to study philosophical statements. This is a philosophical position. It is a metaphysical position. That I'm going to start my investigation of my environment with the position that I will not believe anybody who tells me anything about anything on the basis of them being older than me, being more powerful than I am, if in fact your authority here is God. I am going to start with this philosophical position. So the proof that there are no sacred statements in science, the proof for that statement does not exist in the space of scientific investigation. It exists in the space of philosophical investigation. And this is the subject of the philosophy, at least certain branches of the philosophy of science. So there are two main branches of the philosophy of science. Philosophers who want to understand why science works, and these are the common people you hear, Popper, Lakatos, etc. And then there are philosophers who want to understand whether science has special privilege of getting to at least experimental truths or experimentally verifiable truths. So this is a subject of the philosophy of science and is an active subject of the philosophy of science. There are people struggling to understand this. So that's my most important point. So please, we cannot subject the statements, the foundational statements of a system to the rigor of the system itself. And this was proved by Turing, this was proved by Gödel, that you cannot subject certain mathematical statements to mathematics. You cannot subject certain meta-theoretical statements about any logical system to the logical system itself. You will end up with this, what I like calling Ouroboros statements, snakes eating their own tails. And therefore you end up with a logical contradiction and you walk into the trap that Mwangi Chege has walked us into, which is a problem in of itself. You subject meta-theoretical statements using higher order logical systems. So for example, if you have certain statements about the mathematical consistency of a mathematical system you're studying, you need something called second order logic to prove whether your smaller mathematical system is in fact consistent. So that's how you proceed with trying to understand logical systems. So I need this point to be clear because it has been belabored and it is a misapplication of logic. So please consider second order logic. So you cannot understand science using science. This is not possible. Second point, I really like to insist, because now I am a bit of a political African nationalist, that science did not emerge from the Christian West. Science is as old as Africa. life emerged out of Africa. There is really a lot of evidence that there were forms of science being practiced in Africa, forms of knowledge system verification being practiced in Africa. That's why these cultural hubs that we know can treat certain diseases are actually effective, because there was somebody testing it. Science is not a Christian Western endeavor. It is the oldest lie in the history of science. And nowadays, actually, my specialty is the history of science. This is the oldest lie in the history of science. Science emerged out of the continent. We have Occidental science. The Muslims were excellent scientists. Algorithms, al-Khwarizmi. I'll just repeat this for you. Algebra is an Arabic word. Zero was invented in India. So please, science is a shared human endeavor. What the West did very well was systematize the thing. And I respect them for that, but they did not develop the thing. So that argument that science emerged from the West and the West was Christian, therefore the science emerged from Christianity, is automatically false. The point here is that on speciation and evolution and the complexity of biological organisms, I am not denying that there is a watchmaker. I am not denying that, I'm not trying to claim that the process of evolution is entirely random, entirely unguided, similar to tossing a billion coins at the same time and hoping something happens. This is a misunderstanding of evolution. Evolution is actually very well directed. So there is a watchmaker, there is a designer. It's only that the designer does not require tithe. The designer does not require Sunday attendance. The designer is blind natural forces. Similar to, I would analogize this with the process of capitalism. No individual human being wants to take radioactive waste and pour it down a river. But the forces of capitalism, the forces of cost saving, the forces of efficiency, the forces of greed force this situation on us as human beings, as a society, to have these weird outcomes where we are slashing down entire ecosystems for a bit of chocolate and a bit of television sets. So this is the idea. There are blind forces in operation, and these blind forces in operation are entirely out of human control. So yes, there are going to be outcomes of a very sophisticated, directed process, but this directed, sophisticated process did not die on the cross. Naturalism implying nihilism. So the fact that there is no global meaning for life means that I can take a panga right here and just behead myself and it doesn't matter. First, I should note that nihilism generally, for the intellects who understand it, the philosophers who are exploring its tensions, nihilism is not necessarily destructive. Nihilism is a very sophisticated philosophical position. And naturalism does not necessarily imply nihilism. So most scientists understand the fact that there is no meaning in the universe to mean that your brain, this system of neurons that is enclosed in your skull, must be used to find that meaning, that you are powerful enough to find a meaning for your life that is outside the definition of traditional Judeo-Christian constraints. There's a statement that you said, all of us know intuitively that there is a designer. That is exactly the point of science. Not all of us know. And we cannot develop a system of truth and knowledge on the basis of all of us know. We have to verify. We have to check each other. We should not trust each other. I think those are my statements those are the statements Maxi made that burnt me a lot. Apart from that, I think we can go into discussion. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I think my internet was having a few issues, but thanks for that. And we just want to go quickly to the cross-examination period, and we will start with Shege, if he can put his video on. And so what we will be doing is that for 5 minutes, and we'll have to make it 5 minutes, Shege is only asking questions, and Carrington is only answering. So for those who are joining us, we are talking about the compatibility of science with Christianity or atheism, especially in the African context. So Shege, you can start off, 5 minutes, only questions, and Carrington only answers.
All right. So my first question to you is, you say that the idea that there are no sacred truths is not a statement of science. I think I am not making a statement of science. I'm asking, on naturalism, how do we know that there are no sacred truths?
Thank you. The statement that there are no natural truths, so we are getting into philosophy now, starts from the sociology, actually, that it is easy for a human being or any other society or a collection of human beings to fool themselves. It starts from there. For example, money, you would argue, is a process of us deliberately fooling ourselves. Yeah, that this piece of paper has more value than it is worth. Now, the question here is that if it is easy for us to fool ourselves, it is easy for me to fool myself, to tell myself lies about myself and my environment that comfort me, make me feel like I belong to this universe. Where do we start from when we want to find out the actual truth? And the simplest place to start from, pragmatically, is to say, fine. And this is people who have children do this every day. I'm not talking Greek here. So you have two children. This one has stolen this one's piece of chocolate, but actually it's this one who has stolen this one's piece of chocolate. What do you start from? Okay. I'm not believing either of you. Tell me what happened. So that is where you start from. Okay. God of the Jews, God of the Israelites, God of the Greeks, God of the Kikuyus. I'm not believing either of your stories. Please let us start from zero. So there are no sacred truths.
So
There is nowhere to start from.
Do you disbelieve the God of naturalism?
My position is, my personal position as somebody who's committed to naturalism, is that there is no such thing as a God of naturalism.
Yes, but you see,
in the traditional sense of the word.
Maybe the question I'm asking is, again, you have told me you begin from the position I don't believe anyone. The question is, do you begin also from the position that I don't believe naturalism?
Yes, the fact that it is easy, it is easy for you to fool yourself. It is easy for you to fool yourself.
You begin from the position that you don't believe naturalism, okay?
Yes.
How did you prove it to be true?
So exactly what I did. So exactly what you do. So you say, fine, let me start from this position. Let me test my methodology. And testing methodology is very common. So I start from zero, do something. Let me assume that there are no sacred truths. It makes me more efficient. It makes the construction of a bicycle more efficient for me to assume that there are no ghosts in the bicycle. So it works here. So it can work here in the car. It can work here in the self-driving car. It can work here in the rocket and in the self-autopiloted.
Yeah, but that's the fallacy of opposition, isn't it? To assume that because, okay, fine, how did you do it for the universe?
When you want to find out about the universe, it's okay.
No. Again,
I'm talking about historically. So yeah.
What I'm asking is, you maintain that the universe is all that there is, or maybe the natural world, whichever way you point it out. So you begin by believing.
That statement is not yet tested. I agree with you completely. The statement cannot be.
Know.
1 minute left, and then Carrington starts asking.
Yes.
And if you don't know, then how can you say it is true?
It is an assumption. I'm trying to remember this philosopher. This plurality should not be posited without necessity. What was the name of that philosopher? I forget his name. There's a philosopher. It's basically about minimalism. So start with a minimal set. Instead of me saying, wait, Maxi, instead of me saying
sorry.
that the universe is all there is, plus this extra metaphysical universe, plus this extra theological universe, let me start with this thing that I can see, at least a part of it. And then I can test everything that I can see about this small part. And then if I find something that implies metaphysics, if I find something that implies theology, then I proceed in that direction. But let me start with the minimal set.
Again, okay, I don't know. Charles, okay. All I'm saying is, and all I wanted you to point out is that naturalism itself, and this is what I was arguing really. I don't mind your methodology. I don't mind the process you use. All I'm saying is you cannot claim that naturalism is true. That's the only thing we are saying. And at least on your own admission, it has not been tested.
Yes.
But
yes.
remember, on naturalism,
Okay.
there are
Okay.
no sacred
need
truths.
Proceed, Maxi.
That's all I was asking. So
Oh.
if there are no sacred truths and it hasn't been tested, then how can you say it is true?
Okay, but it hasn't been tested. I mean, it hasn't. The test is not
as
complete.
you answer that.
Okay. The test is not
Carrington,
complete.
as you answer, you will pick up with a question, because now it's your time for questions.
Yeah. I need to clarify this. The testing is never complete. I think this is where I think theologically oriented individuals like that feeling of finality. Science is not a finality in of itself. It's a process. It's an iterative process. So the assumption that the universe is all there is has not been tested completely, and we will never get to an answer to whether the universe is all there is, because a scientist will tell you that and a philosopher will tell you that the question is poorly posed. So it is an operational statement. So if I'm making a bicycle, I want to find out, does prayer help when I'm making a bicycle? Or understanding the properties of metals, which is more important for me when making a bicycle, for example. So I first start without the prayer, make the bicycle. If the bicycle works, I don't need the prayer. But if the bicycle doesn't work without the prayer, then I really need to pray. And if the prayer works and causes the bicycle to move, well and good. We live in a system where creating bicycles need prayer. So,
okay, you can get to your questions now. 5 minutes.
Maxi, do brains inverts, these brains inverts that you are talking about, that we don't know without God, whether these brains inverts whether we are brains inverts without theology, without sophisticated theology of Christianity, we don't know whether we are brains inverts. Can't these brains inverts be Christian?
So the point I am making is that for you to do science, you have to do it as if you are not a brain in a vat. Okay? You have to believe that there's a real world out here. There's an objective reality that you are studying. But on naturalism, you have no way of proving that. You can't know that. And so when, for example, the guy who believes in last Thursdaysism comes and says, all this is an illusion, okay? The best you can tell him is you don't believe that, but you can't prove them wrong. And so that's why I'm saying on naturalism, it becomes very difficult to do science consistently. Because
Maxi, I get your point. I get your point. So I have a follow-up question.
Yes.
The antithesis of this belief that the universe was created last Thursday is this antithesis of this belief that the universe was created 6,000 years ago and life began in the Middle East. Is this the antithesis of last Thursday?
So you're talking about.
Do you think that a belief is an answer to another belief? Why do you think that a belief can replace another belief? What is the basis for you judging that this belief is better than that belief?
Now, remember, this discussion is whether, as a scientist, you should hold to naturalism or belief in God. Now, I am saying, now, number one, not all Christians believe that the world was created 6,000 years ago. That's
I was just
creationism. But suppose I hold to young earth creationism, which is still a possible reality, by the way. All we are saying is that what I can see, the way I know, and how I can prove that the world out there is objective is because I know that I have been created in the image of the God who created that world. That's what we are saying. So on Christian, now you might say Christianity is false, but you see the Christian is being consistent, that what he believes, that there's material reality created by God, is consistent with the fact that he also believes that his brain was created by God, and the way he understands it is consistent. That's the point. So if you want to do your studies consistently, it is better to hold to Christianity than to hold in a worldview that doesn't even allow you to do your science consistently. And that's not even my position. Many of these philosophers have held this. They say that you have to live in a kind of cognitive dissonance, that you believe what you are saying is an illusion, but you still hold to it because you need to do the science. And that's all I am saying.
Okay,
it is not
I don't. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry to interject. I don't know any of these atheist philosophers, but
Okay.
if it is an issue of my understanding of my practice of studying science is that in science you have to deal not with inconsistency. In fact, science is obsessed with consistency. There are these things that there are these 500 pages proofs that you need to do in mathematics to prove that 1 + 1 = 2. I'm sure you've heard of these things. And the people are doing these calculations just to prove that the system is consistent. Science is very obsessed with consistency. So I will disagree that naturalism, this philosophy that is based on science, is inconsistent. But I would agree that it is uncertain. There's a certain element of constant uncertainty in science. So we are constantly pushing, Sawa Charles, we are constantly pushing the limits on what we understand about our universe. And this, therefore, by definition, actually requires you to be accepting of uncertainty. So, and this is actually my sentimental disagreement, I will say, with religiously inclined thinkers. The need for finality in truths.
And notice here, it's not an issue with science, and I hope you phrased this as a comment, but there's a question inside there, so I'll just try to answer. The battle has never been with science. Science, number one, again, I don't even think mathematics is science, but that's a different issue. But science is interested in finding out, investigating, doing all these things. And that is totally in order. Do we even have a complete system? Do we have a complete set? Do we have anything that we can prove materially with finality? That's the function of science. And the Christian can do that very well. The naturalist can do that very well. So both of them can do science. But remember, the question we are being asked today is, given that we can all do science, which worldview is better to hold? Should I hold to a naturalistic worldview that tells me that I can never really go, and that I have just to rely on all truths are observational truth, empirical truths? Should I rely on that? Or should I rely on a worldview that allows me both empirical truth, but also metaphysical truth? And that's why I'm saying naturalism has a metaphysical truth it assumes. And it assumes what?
I agree completely.
But it can't prove that
metaphysical claim. I agree completely.
And that's why I'm saying, because of that, then Christianity is a superior worldview to naturalism. Just because
no.
That's all I'm saying.
No.
That's my contention. Of course, your contention is different.
No,
okay,
you're
sorry,
diving into the deep end. So this has metaphysical foundations. This has metaphysical foundations, and because of that, this is superior to that. Why is this superior to that? But
because
anyway,
it can explain its metaphysical grounding. Naturally,
the first thing about God. Sorry, Charles. The first thing about God is that he cannot be understood. It is repeated ad nauseum that God cannot be understood completely. So God is a postulate of Christianity. You see, God is a postulate of Christianity. Yeah,
not,
and
let's allow Charles.
And these metaphysical groundings do Actually, in my second last slide, I explained exactly why I think that the two are inconsistent. This idea of verificationism and belief, and that's why naturalism is more in consonance with the methods of science than theology or Christian philosophy. But anyway, we'll take this forward.
Okay, so if you can even believe it, we were supposed to finish the whole debate right now, but we still have Q&A and final statements. So I don't even know what we are going to do. But I think V is the only one who has asked questions. I want to see whether we have, and I hope my connection is okay because I'm seeing some problems on my end, but I'm wondering on the Zoom, those who joined the Zoom, whether they might have any question here. Maybe they want to ask a question on the chat. I've been asked on the YouTube stream, and I'm hoping I'm very clear. Oh yeah, I've just realized there's a problem with my mic. All right, I've decided to remove my video because maybe that's the reason my mic has issues. So I hope I'm clear now. Am I clear now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll remove my video for the time being. Okay, so if there's anyone with a question, if not, I'll just proceed quickly to these. And so like what I would request is your response should be like 30 seconds. And then let's say if a question is addressed to Mwangi, then Carrington responds in 15 seconds. I know that's unfair, but time is so far much spent. So like, I think we know how to be concise because I think we've done this in the past before. So I will go to the questions on YouTube. So the first question is, and I guess this is actually to both of you, that whether the persistence of doubt within a worldview should be considered a weakness or a strength. So I guess maybe we could start with Mwangi to address that. And then, so just 30 seconds or a minute if you have to, and then Carrington will comment.
So doubt, I think doubt in itself is necessarily not a bad thing, but I think what he's asking here is skepticism, because that's what he's saying, that science is always skeptical. Now, Carrington mentioned that you can't subject a system to its own tenets, and I disagree. I think you can, and you should. And in fact, philosophy is always aiming at investigating whether systems, and that's why, for example, the guys who are looking for complete sets and whether mathematics is complete as a system, so far they have settled on the fact that it is not a complete system, you know, because every system should be subjected. And so even skepticism itself should be subjected to its own tenets. And that's what I am trying to say. So that there is a level of skepticism that is actually anti-knowledge. That you can be so skeptical that you are anti-knowledge. But, you know, there's a healthy dose of skepticism that is good, okay? And that's why I think that people can question, and that's why I don't believe in all religions, for example. I am skeptical also of truths in religion and theology, but I have a system of evaluating which worldview actually makes sense. And so I will reject Islam, I will reject all atheistic philosophies, I will reject Judaism because I have reasons. And I think that's how we should go. So we need to ask, each worldview, can it support its metaphysical claims? And if it can't, then we have reason to reject it. Thank you, Charles. I thought that was concise.
Okay, I think it was maybe Carrington, just a short comment on what he said, and then move to the next question. Very short.
I will be very short. There's a statement I wrote with erasable ink at the room, near my bed, in my hostel when I was in undergraduate. If you are not confused, you're not thinking. If you are completely sure about anything, any statement that you have inside your head. If you're completely convicted about any statement that you have inside your head, it means that you're not thinking about it. So doubt is not only good, it is existential to your ability to think. I'm done. Yeah, I'm done.
Oh, my dear. Oops. Oh, sorry, guys. I think there was a bit of a break there. Don't know what's happening with my net, but I think there's only
We are losing you.
one more question and we might be getting into closing. Am I clear? I think I'm clear now. And the question was to Mwangi on whether you had claimed that there are some aspects of Christianity that might not be true. I don't know if I heard that.
No. I did not say which aspect. I don't think I said any aspects of Christianity are not true. I mean, that's why I'm a Christian. Perhaps
and so
what
like
we would
false. And
perhaps maybe the clarification would be that there are many things that Christians disagree on, but they are foundational truths on mere Christianity that we agree in, and that's what I'm trying to defend. You could think this denomination is better than that. That's not the point. It's the central claims of Christianity that I'm trying to defend.
okay. Maybe Carrington, I don't know if you want to say anything there or you're good.
I think we have a problem with the internet, but
Oh.
I think a significant amount of statements in the Bible are manifestly false. That's all I can say. Manifestly false. Thank you.
Okay. Whoa. I think that requires another debate. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, I think I see another question from, I think, I don't know if he wants to ask it verbally or he wants to send the question via chat. I think it's verbal. Maybe Mr. Peewee, you could just, you could ask the question.
Yeah, I don't know how many questions I'm permitted to ask, but I have 3 questions.
You have 3? Okay. If you could ask them in less than a minute, because I will pick yours as the last and final question, and we just finish off with the final statements. So you can just summarize them in less than a minute.
Yeah, so the brother representing the atheist view, he mentioned the word proof. Like, is there a difference between proof and evidence? And is it better to use proof in science, or evidence when it comes to science? So, and my next question is, you saying that science actually started in Africa, and that is absolutely true. So, but you just said that we could be fooling ourselves. And science is the way to go when it comes to knowing what is true. And so how can we know that? I could argue that actually that started in Asia, not Africa. What's about the statement that science says nothing?
1 minute is up.
Science says nothing, people do. What do you have to say about that statement? Because actually, like for example, COVID, people say, it started from the lab, and the scientists, people we call the scientists were like saying, no, that's not true. That's just conspiracy theory that it started. But now people coming out to say again, that was the case. So what do you have to say about that statement?
All right, thanks, Mr. Peewee, for that. That's a brother from Liberia. Thank you for joining us. I guess, Carrington, you can comment on what you can. And maybe you can pick whatever you'd like to comment and then close. Oh, can anyone hear me?
Carrington, you're muted.
Sorry.
Oh.
Wow, sorry. I was just saying that truth is an operation. Can you hear me? I was saying that evidence is an operationalization of truth. So when you have a methodology which obtains certain data from the universe,
yes, I can
from
hear.
the environment, then this is what you call evidence. So you need to operationalize the word truth in your scientific methodology, and this is what we call evidence. Evidence has a much more constrained meaning compared to the more philosophical, metaphysical truth. But one of the operational understandings of science, of the implicit understandings of science, is that evidence generally matches truth. And that's why science has special access to truth. So science started in Africa. Yes, even this statement needs to be tested, needs to be verified, needs to be put to extreme historical, archaeological tests. Nothing is to be accepted from authority. And I'm not even an authority for that matter. So even that statement should be tested. So yes, I agree with you completely. Don't believe me, verify. On COVID-19, it is clear that it started in Chinese wet markets. A lot has been published about this. I am not specifically a microbiologist or a disease specialist for that matter. I forget the word. So I can't know. I don't have the competence to assess the evidence. But the people I trust, yes, say that it began in wet markets. So yes, but if you would want to establish this as a truth, then go ahead and verify, read the papers, study the data, try and understand the biochemistry, etc. Yeah. Science is very taxing for that matter. So yeah, it is not possible to verify all scientific truths, even in 10 lifetimes. Thank you.
All right, Shege, you can just comment in 15 seconds, and then we get
I
to
think
the
place I need to clarify again, when I didn't say science, I said modern science. And if I did say science, I just meant modern science. And when you talk about modern science, it's that systematizing that you are talking about. And notice before that, science was not known as science. It was known as natural philosophy. And at that time, there was natural philosophy, and there are other kinds of philosophy, including theology, which was the queen of the sciences. So at that point in time, when science was known as natural philosophy, there was a lot of other truths that were still welcome. What I'm talking about is modern science, and that, I think, even historians of science agree, will begin at the Christian West, and we are asking why. That was the point I was making.
So yeah, and I need to also underline that and disturb you a bit. I'm sorry, Maxi, I need to be pedantic about this. This is actually being challenged actively now by historians of science. So
right,
that's
okay.
I
am just saying
it's a pedantic point. It's a pedantic point. So
yeah.
but
you
it
see,
is being challenged.
if you define anything as science, then we'll have technology all the way back to Mesopotamia and the likes. So there's what we are calling modern science, the scientific method, experimentation, and I know even the scientific method is not universal. And I think so far the best data we have began in the scientific West. But again,
and I've just argued that exactly that point is under pressure. That exactly what you're saying is under pressure.
We will see.
But
we will see how far it goes.
Yeah.
So like I think we almost started the cross exam. So I'm sorry guys for my network, is quite messed up, but we will just get into the closing statements. And unfortunately, I have to tell you guys to do it in 2 minutes. I know that's impossible.
Okay, should I start?
But closing statements in 2 minutes each.
Okay. Should I start?
Carrington, yeah. Carrington, you can start and then Shege will finish.
Okay, yeah. I just have 4 statements. So again, pictures as a guide of thinking. 1, science is a method of thinking, of verifying things. 2, Christianity is a belief system that was created, that was developed, that accepts Jesus as the Son of God, and that he died for our sins and resurrected. 3rd, naturalism is a philosophical system that is committed to the methodology, the philosophical underpinnings of science, that there are no sacred truths and everything must be verified. Last lesson, this implies that naturalism is more suited as a philosophical underpinning of science than Christianity. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Carrington. Shege, you can finish off the next 2 minutes.
So you remember I began by saying that we have 2 worldviews here we are trying to investigate in light of science. And I said, and even as a strong believer of Christianity, that I don't even think that naturalism even starts, that it cannot even be found to be true. And you will find that sometimes, and again, this is in discussion, I don't want to speak it with finality, that there are verificationist ideas that are now being shown. Because of verificationism, you can come up with a system that will actually be flawed. But that is besides the point of this discussion. The point, and what we were hoping to find, is to hear reasons why we should believe naturalism is true, and we did not hear. But I want to finish with the words of Jesus in Matthew chapter 7. After talking to his disciples, he tells them that everyone who hears his word is like that man who built his house on a rock, that when the rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and beat on the house, it did not fall, because it was founded on a rock. But everyone who hears his words and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And when the winds came and the winds blew, the house fell. And I want to say, you just look at the worldviews, because the evidence is there. Find which worldview actually has a rock solid foundation. And if the worldview has a rock solid foundation, build your science and your hopes on that rock solid foundation. But if you find that a worldview cannot even ground itself, then you are building your science on sinking sand. And when the winds will blow, it will be found to be utterly meaningless. And I think this is where I stop. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
All right, thanks a lot, guys. I think it's been a very exciting debate. And I think it's great to see that these issues and are not well dealt with. And hopefully we can do that in the future. But we have a YouTube page that we are live streaming on. It's called Africa Debates. And you can just search the scientifically minded Millennial or Gen Z embrace Christianity, or on the Africa Debates channel, and then you'll find the so like we already have another debate we did earlier this month, and we'll continue doing them, so you can follow us. But now we have to end, and yeah, so yeah, our purpose is just to engage African minds on issues to do with Africa somehow. At least I believe so. So live stream will have a recording and you can follow up on it. But thanks for joining us. And yeah, thanks also Carrington. I know Mwangi has left, but or is leaving. But yeah, thanks guys for showing up, and we will otherwise have a good evening and a nice weekend.